report. So each of the content area exams, they are created from just two sources and two sources alone. So the first source is the standards, and every content area has their own particular standards that you have to abide by and know all the concepts, and you have to be able to do all of the things in there. So is one component of the exam is what you are responsible for, and you'll see right up front it makes mention of the second thing that they use to make your exam, and those are the TEKS for speech.
Yeah.
Particular, anything that is listed in the TEKS, like it says approved in 2004. These standards haven't been updated since that long, but in any event, they are the law. So by law,
Yeah.
we're supposed to know the things, the knowledge and concepts in this document, and also be able to do the things that it prescribes of us. And so standard one right up front refers to your ability to create effective instruction utilizing those TEKS, utilizing your knowledge of the particulars that the students are responsible for. So let's go to the other thing that is used, and that is, and we'll see where it's at. I believe it's in the English. Maybe not. I always have difficulty finding it because it's not just like easily. It's not there. It's not here. Where would it be? Maybe it is here in high school. Oh, here it is. So here they
Yeah.
are. So here you have like the debate, and here you have independent study even on speech, and like literally anything that has to do. So the way that you find them is in the English language arts and reading TEKS under the high school credits. And so you have public speaking. That should be like the first one that is connected, and you have to know everything that's listed in this document, and you won't have to know it every day of your professional life because you will have a handful of classes. You might have public speaking one, maybe like 3 sections of that, and like 2 sections of public speaking 2. And so you get really good as a teacher, and you begin to be an expert in those particular TEKS while you're teaching them. Then they might come to you and say, we want to add these classes, and then you'll have to become an expert in those TEKS as well. But for the purposes of this exam, unfortunately, you have to be a mini expert in all of them that are
Yeah.
under the purview of speech and communication. So what I tell my students to do, and I'll actually show you one, because you can go and print this out in a PDF and just print out the actual section that you need, right? And then do your annotations. And the reason that I'm having you do annotations, and I even want you to talk about it like with whomever, your friends, your partner, your parents, your siblings, just say like, oh, well, did you know in like the first public speaking class, like some of the try to talk about these ideas, because it solidifies that information internally. So if you have someone
Yeah.
you talk as a study buddy, it's a great help to you, which is why in the classroom we do things like think, pair, share, right? We give them a question or have them annotate a document, and then get with a partner and say, this is what I discovered, this is what I think the correct answer is, and then that person tells them like, oh, I agree with you, or actually this is what I heard, and they can negotiate that. Practicing that knowledge helps internalizing it. You taking notes and paraphrasing the different chunks in the particular TEKS in these different classes is going to be important. You want to know overall what is the goal that the state of Texas, because this here, never forget that it is Texas Administrative Code. Again, it's the law. So by law, we have to be doing and teaching these things. And the students, when they're in our classes, need to gain these particular knowledge, concepts, and skills. They need to master them. So that's where we write our objectives from. We get and create our objectives for class, utilizing the TEKS. So I was going to show you an example. It's not like the absolute best example, but it's pretty good and I like it. I'm going to show it to you. And when I say it's not the absolute best, but she could do more chunking the text and sort of paraphrasing, even for the concepts that you are familiar with, because you just want to make sure this is cognitive, you know, exercise, if you will. And the exam in and of itself is going to be a cognitive marathon. I tell all of my students that it is a 5-hour critical reading exam. It is not meant to just measure your knowledge of communication studies, right, of speech for 7 through 12. It is also meant to be tricky, and there are keywords and phrases you need to pay attention to. So you would do different things with 7th grade students than you would with your 11th graders or your 10th graders. So depending on the age group or the grade level that they give you, take those things into consideration, because it's also a critical reading exam. Let me see. This is an example of a diving deep. And what that means is, as you go through the TEKS, you should be reading, taking notes, anything that like Constitution Day. I don't know what day that is in particular, and I don't have to know because I'm not going to teach social studies, but she was. And so for the purposes of that exam, she's got to know that and just be able to write it down, color code it if you have to, draw pictures. And typically you want to do that for people like, the reason I think that she didn't go far enough is because although I could give you a pretty good oral explanation or instruction of Christopher Columbus, George Washington, even Stephen F. Austin, because I've done this particular session with a student, I don't feel like, oh no, I think maybe I do. Jose Antonio Navarro was a Spaniard and he was one of the first impresarios. Okay, I'm getting it. I really actually could, but even so, I don't feel comfortable enough. I would want to, again, to where I could do it really quickly, tell you a little blurb about who this person was and how he helped shape the nation and state. And for this, it has to do with Texas history. So I'm gonna get off the history bandwagon. That's what I mean by a deep dive. And I'm gonna want you to do that for your own TEKS. And so you could, and we'll go to it right now. We'll just, I think I would have to go all the way back here. And then from here, I choose PDF. When I started teaching, it was in 2003. We didn't even have any of this online. Like, we're lucky if you got a handout, a paper handout that had your TEKS on it. And then the internet was a thing, and they had it always just the way we were looking at it before. And now there's actually this sort of handy dandy PDF. And you're not going to need everything in it, because this has, you know, English 1, and you are going to be wanting, or you could go from those other pages and click on the particular courses that are offered in Texas, and then, you know, print it off the computer that way. Either way, oops, doesn't matter which route you choose. I'm trying to get to where we are needing it. You know what? Let me just really quickly, I'm gonna do speech PDF. Let me see if I can just open that PDF in my, what is it, Adobe? And then we could just sort of erase the ones that aren't necessary, and then I can email you that document. That I feel like that is possibly,
if it's not too much trouble.
no, it shouldn't be. I wanna,
Yeah, but like as of now, like because I got my results back from the exam, and of course
did you
the
send them
one
to me?
section. Excuse me?
Did you send them to me by any chance?
No, the only thing that was required, I believe, was the ticket when you first sign up for it, or when you first yeah, when you first sign up for the exam.
Oh, okay. So if you could send those to me, that'd be great. That way I could find particular areas and maybe things like resources for support in those particular competencies.
Yeah, I took out all my college books that I had, so I'm like I'm just going straight for those.
Right. This is going to help you a lot more, because it's going to be able to, you're going to, let me see if I'm able to make changes now. Am I able to edit this? I think I am. Possibly. we'll be able to see what particular areas of need. So we're gonna just erase a whole bunch. Hopefully. Did it delete it? Oh, it did. Wonderful. But as I'm deleting, I'm reading the section here, and you guys are also responsible for that, like this portion here. Providing support for English language learners that are going to be in your, speech classes. That means doing particular strategies to help support ELLs and second language acquisition learners. So pre-teaching academic vocabulary that you're going to use, or even social vocabulary that you think might be unfamiliar, or vocabulary, content-specific vocabulary that's going to be unfamiliar. Oh my God, I just only erased one portion. Sorry, I'm trying to make this easier for you, and I feel like I'm taking longer.
It's okay.
Okay. How about I do this later and I'll send it to you, and then we can just like look at it here.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know why I haven't thought of doing this before. So here's reading. I'm getting to like where it is, and I can also write down like what page number it is that I need to erase to. Visual media analysis, literary genres, creative writing. Okay, now it's at the end. Research and technical. We're getting closer. Practical writing. It was after one of these. Humanities for sure. Maybe after this. Okay, here it is. Okay, so once you would have this printed out, you would chunk the text by doing a critical reading. And a critical reading is you're like looking at the words, you're looking at like what skills the students have to do and what skills you have to help the students do and what way you can support them. So let's take a look at the introduction. In order to have full participation in the civic process. So your job as a communication, the goal for Texas legislature creating these courses and this content area is for better civic processes, to have better public dialogue, for people to be able to discuss with each other about the civic process, and to be able to be a person and a participant in the different processes, like going and speaking at a city council meeting, or at the school board, or at the house, or at the Capitol, because right now they're literally trying to defund public education. So like it's necessary for everyone that comes through the schools to be able to articulate and think through their arguments and ideas. So full process civic process, students must have a good understanding of public dialogue. Students must learn the concepts and skills related to preparing and presenting public messages. So we want for them to be strong, to be able to create, they themselves have an idea and a message, analyze and evaluate the message and its effectiveness on different audiences and why that matters, and how when you're speaking to different audiences, you have to change your message. I am not a super duper big fan of like the GOP ideology, especially as it pertains to public education and teachers at the moment. And so when I speak to people who are Republicans, and there are many, I have students that are Republicans, I can come to them many different ways. But if I want to affect any sort of change or to have a productive dialogue, I have to, remember my audience and sort of come from a place of commonality when we're talking about ideas. So we want the students to be able to do this. Within the process, students will gain skills in reading, writing, speaking, and listening and thinking. And we'll examine areas such as invention, organization, style, memory, and delivery. So for your courses, there's going to be a lot of you creating opportunities for them to read, to write, to speak, to listen to each other. Like I said, those think, pair, shares, maybe which I love this particular activity to utilize in your classroom, but it's called, one moment.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, I'm giving a session. It's called Jigsaw. So the Jigsaw is this really great gallery. You can even do a gallery walk before and then do a jigsaw. I mean, there's no end to the different activities that you could utilize in order to get the students to be reading, writing, speaking, listening, and thinking. Jigsaw's a really great one. It has them synthesize information and bring it back to their groups and have to sort of articulate what they heard, and they become mini experts on a particular section. And so in some of my videos, I go in and we actually watch them together. Actually, I'll just find it for you right now. I'm gonna do Jigsaw. Jig strategy. So I'm gonna try to, let me see. When looking for, this one's 9 minutes, 3 minutes. I look at time, like efficient wise. This is how you should like measure your resources when you're looking. You want like a valid resource. I mean, I like this cult of pedagogy business. I feel like I'm gonna click on this one because it's not too long. And I mean, Let's Teach looks credible as well. But I'm just going to choose this one. Whenever you're going through the TEKS, if you see something, because there are particular strategies that students have to utilize that are in the TEKS, and some of them we're not familiar with because they weren't taught to us when we were in school. For instance, the math teachers, they have to know what pictorials are and how to use them in instruction, and the students have to know how to use them to do math. So it behooves us to know what pictorials are. They also have to know the box method for multiplication and division. I did not know that. And I specifically remember my three older set of kids coming home and telling me and almost like crying. And I feel so bad at this moment, but I was very busy and I was a teacher and a grad student. And I was like, babe, multiplication is multiplication. Like, we don't have to do the box method. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about right now. And so because he couldn't explain it to me and I didn't investigate it further, we just did it normal way. And I hope he didn't get in trouble, but there's a reason to it. It's in the TEKS. That's why they were specifically having to practice that method. And it is a good method. And so if it's in your TEKS, that means you have to know it. So I would use the Mometrics and any other resource you have to go through the TEKS. Look, read them critically and find particular things that you need to investigate further that you couldn't yourself just off the top of your head discuss and or be able to do or clarify or sort of articulate what is it that the students have to do here and how would I help them do it. So let's look at this jigsaw method because it's really cool to utilize with the students to get them to listen, to speak, to read, and to write.
Leadership, monarchy. Hey there, this is Jennifer Gonzalez for Cult of Pedagogy.
Jennifer Gonzalez, thank you very much.
Showing you how to use the jigsaw method. First, I'll show you the basic structure of the jigsaw, then a variation known as Jigsaw 2, and finally, I'll give you some tips for troubleshooting this strategy. So what is the jigsaw method? Developed by Elliot Aronson in 1971, Jigsaw is a cooperative learning strategy where each student in a group takes responsibility for one chunk of the content. Like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, students fit their individual chunks together to form a complete body of knowledge. Here are the steps of a basic jigsaw, sometimes referred to as Jigsaw 1. Step 1 is to divide students into groups of 4 to 6 people per group. Jigsaw works best when you have the same number of students in each team. So avoid having some groups of 4, some of 5, and some.
Yeah, I only really like it if we have matching. I mean, it's really the point is that it's of the puzzle. It's really not complete. You're missing a puzzle piece, and that's a chunk of knowledge that the other groups are getting. So it always has to be even numbers.
Later in this video, I'll show you what to do if you can't divide students into perfectly even teams. For this example, we'll assume you're working with a class of exactly 30 students who can be divided evenly into groups of 6. We'll call these Jigsaw Groups. Step 2, divide your content into 4 to 6 chunks. It's important to divide the content into the same number of chunks as the number of students in each group. So if you have 6 students per group, break your content into 6 chunks. If you're only going to have 5 students in each group, then you'll only need 5 chunks. Suppose you're a history teacher and you're doing an overview of different types of government. You could divide your content into these chunks: democracy, dictatorship, monarchy, republic, totalitarianism, and theocracy. By the way, these index cards just represent chunks of content. You don't need to use actual index cards to do Jigsaw.
Right. It could be like an article that's about democracy, and an article for you, it could be an article about different types of public speaking or scenarios for public speaking, or something else having to do with you could even do it in like pairs, but nah, it works best in 4 to 6.
A chunk of content
Larger
can be a
numbers.
section of a textbook chapter, a handout containing information,
An
or an
article.
online resource. Step 3, assign one chunk of content to each person in the Jigsaw group. Each group has one person responsible for one chunk of the content. That person will be expected to teach that chunk to the rest of the group. At this point, students don't really interact with other members of their group. They just read and study their own chunk of content independently. Then their independent study is fortified by the next step. Step 4, have students meet in expert groups. After each student has studied his or her chunk independently, they gather with all the other students who.
So they're reading, they're analyzing, annotating, hopefully using other strategies of metacognition that we've taught them, analyzing that chunk of text, and they move with expert groups and are now going to even delve further and become more knowledgeable in their area because they're going to discuss. And this is practice and listening and speaking skills. And it's great because it's sort of a low risk practice for our ELL students or language proficiency, and even our native English speakers with low oral language proficiency. It's good for them, but it's a low risk negotiation of ideas. So if they understood incorrectly a little bit, or like they missed a giant point, that is going to be clarified in these groups that they go to, because they're adding to their analysis as they're in these groups, like expert groups.
Chunk. These are called expert groups. Within each expert group, students compare their ideas and work together to prepare some kind of presentation to give to their Jigsaw group. During this time, gaps in individual students' knowledge can be filled, misconceptions can be cleared up, and important concepts can be reinforced.
Yes.
Step 5, students return to Jigsaw groups. Now that students have studied their chunks in their expert groups, they return to their original Jigsaw groups, where each student takes a turn presenting their chunk of information. Meanwhile, the other students listen carefully, take notes, and ask lots of questions. Once the first expert has gone, the others take their turns. As each expert teaches their chunk of content, the others in the group are learning it. Step 6, assess all students on all the content.
And so she's going to go over other ones, but I'm not going to show you other ones. I want to go back to our particular TEKS. So, but that isn't a good example of like a literal activity in which you would be utilizing all of those things that you're supposed to be doing. You have to constantly every day be reading, writing, speaking, listening, and thinking. Let me see. High school students whose first language is not English, the student's native language serves as a foundation for English language acquisition and language learning. So their native language serves as a foundation so we need to take steps to like bring in prior knowledge whenever possible, connects to native language, to continue to build that language acquisition. Let me see. Essential knowledge and skills, as well as student expectations for public speaking. 1, 2, and 3 elective courses are described in the subsection. So in each one of them, they're the same TEKS. I would imagine that the rigor and difficulty with which the different levels are delved into, and the types of projects that you assign based on their age is going to be different, right? So if public speaking 1 is 7th grade, then even some of the topics that you'll put up for discussion, I think are going to be a little bit different than topics you might put up for public speaking 3,
Mhm.
choice wise.
Yeah.
So here, student traces the development of the rhetorical perspective. So how did rhetoric and composition, how has it sort of like bloomed throughout history? And you have to have a solid understanding of that. I don't know how you did on that section that asks you about the rhetorical canons and all that good stuff. Do you have your scores with you?
Not with it. They're in my house right now, my computer. It's because I'm
Oh,
at
okay.
a high school right now working.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No,
Yeah.
you're fine.
Proofs and appeals, valid proofs and appeals in speeches. So there's a logical organizations for different types of bodies of speech. And
Are those numbers the domains?
no, they're
Like it
not
says
the
four,
domain.
five.
No,
No,
they're
okay,
not. So like this document here is what you would use as a teacher for your students. So each student has to be able
gotcha.
to do this. So like by
Yeah.
the time the student leaves your classroom, the student must be able to recognize and analyze various speech forms. And with specifics, these are them. So they need to be able to both identify and analyze traditional elements of speech form, including introduction, body, and conclusion. So they have to identify in speeches. That means that you have to provide opportunities for them to analyze text, right? That's what that takes. And so that they could maybe in groups take a look at which is the beginning, where is the body, what is the conclusion of this speech. Identify and analyze different logical patterns of organization for speech forms, specific speech forms. Identify and analyze characteristics of speech to inform. So there are particular characteristics of speech to inform, and your students have to be able to identify them and analyze them. There are particular characteristics of speech to persuade, including, and these are ones like if you don't, policy, problem, value, fact, but they have to be able to identify them and analyze them. It's sort of crazy now because most speeches that take place on many like news media, they're literally like not factually based, like against policy for decades, and they're just nobody calls them out on how they're like go against what traditional elements and acceptable elements of speech form are,
Yeah, that's one advice because well, I work at a high school, right? So
Mhm.
I recognize some teachers that have taken through Teacher Builder, and every single one of them, it never fails. They tell me, what you see here in the school, it's not really what the exam is going to be like because the exam is more on the perfect world.
Oh, absolutely. It's perfect world. You have like, and there's no discipline problems that are out of
Yeah.
control. Like the parents are on board, your administration is there, you have an unlimited supply of resources to do whatever like learning styles, audio, visual, tactile,
Hmm.
like it's best case scenario. It's Utopia ISD because after all, this is a theoretical exam. In theory, all of these things should take place. And the people that you talk to, they're very right. I study with PE coaches and we analyze their TEKS. And within the law, it says every single campus has to have, and it lists it's a long paragraph of tools, resources, things that I know for a fact there are a lot of elementary, middle school, high school campuses that do not have those resources. They literally just don't. Pickleball, like even my girls, they didn't know what pickleball was. And the ladies, when we were at the island for Easter, said like we have pickleball stuff, and we didn't know. My daughter loves pickles, and she says, "Oh, I'm not familiar with pickleball, but I'm interested." But like that's by law. In the law, it says every campus should have it, but we know that they don't. For the purpose
Yeah.
of the exam, I told the PE coaches, you have to know what like if you don't know what pickleball is or pickleball paddles or what this particular game is or resource because you haven't used it, you have to look it up. You have to see how it's used and have that point. You don't have to memorize it, but you certainly want to take the time to investigate it, come back and write it down on your TEKS paperwork. So let me see if I can find something and we'll look at the debate. So let me see. I don't see anything that's super. Here's communication applications. You also have to do this one. So for this one, the goal, and at the end of each paragraph, just off to the side, right, what it's mostly about. Understanding the skills, developing skills in communication are fundamental for all other learning and to all levels of human interaction for successful participation in professional and social life. So this one is more professional and social life. This other one that was public speaking was about the public domain also, right? Public discourse and civil participation. It helps when you're picking out best sort of activities and assignments if you can think of like what the goal is when they say, oh, you know, Miss Sauceda's public speaking 2 course, you know, is trying to do more critical thinking, or she's trying to include more critical thinking in her things. And so you should know, like, okay, well, what sort of things should they be doing in public speaking, and how can I increase the like rigor of that? Communication processes, importance of effective communication. They have to be able to explain, they have to identify the components of the communicative process and their functions. Standards, you know, listening, encoding and decoding. Identify characteristics of oral language and analyze standards for using informal, standard, and technical language appropriately. So identifying nonverbal communication and their effects, the different effects of nonverbal communication. So everything that's here, listening skills, critical, deliberative, and empathetic. Empathic, not empathetic. Empathic, yeah. So I would have to like look that up, and I have a master's degree in communication, but I can't tell you off the top of my head what that is. So I'm just gonna Google it really quickly, and so I can know like what it means to be empathic listening. Oh, I just put empathic listening. I can like, obviously I can use context clues, but so I would just like listening to someone's feelings, like just hearing them out and not really. Empathic listening is a structured listening and questioning technique that allows you to develop and enhance relationships with a stronger understanding of what is being conveyed, both intellectually and emotionally. I want to know more. So thank you for trusting me with this information. Thank you for sharing. I can relate. Oh, well, that just seems like mimic content, paraphrase, reflect emotion, mirror back. This seems kind of manipulative a bit. But so you're just like listening.
A little bit, yeah.
Right? And you're just listening and being there. Prices, positive, indeed. I'm trying to look for a reliable source. Let's look at this one. Okay.
I guess it's just a way for you to be interested in a topic.
Right. So the student's active listening skills, you utilize this. So the student would have to know what active listening skills even were. Reflection of feelings, questioning technique combined with interpersonal ability of empathy to understand. So someone better intellectually. So just like, and not just asking them blanket questions like it said on that paper, but you know, being like, how can I convey, hold on. Ignoring the other person entirely, pretending to listen to the person, selectively listen to what they're saying, attentively listening to them, listening to the speaker with empathy. So of 7 habits, the 5th habit states, seek to understand, then to be understood. I like that. Oh my God, I'm not going to sign up. Stop. It's like marketing. I know what empathy is. Oh, I love Bell Hooks. She's one of my favorite communication scholars. I've read rhetoricians, if you will. Actually, I have 2 master's degree. One is in English and rhetoric and composition, and one is in communication. And so I'm a super huge fan of Bell Hooks, and I want to see what she says. Those of us who were wounded in childhood often were shamed and humiliated when we expressed hurt. It is emotionally devastating when the partners we have chosen will not listen. Usually, partners who are unable to respond compassionately when hearing us speak our pain, whether they understand it or not, are unable to listen because that expressed hurt triggers their own feelings of powerlessness and helplessness. Many men never want to feel helpless or vulnerable. They will, at times, choose to silence a partner with violence rather than witness emotional vulnerability. When a couple can identify this dynamic, they can work on the issue of caring, listening to each other's pain by engaging in short conversations at appropriate times. Setting a time. Okay, so this wasn't what I was thinking, and this was bell hooks. Wow. Committed to doing the work of love, we listen even when it hurts. So yeah, just being empathetic, listening, being quiet, listening without judgment, creating a safe space, like allowing them to say, like, you know, I understand what you're feeling, like it's natural. This is terrible. Feel free to acknowledge their voice by saying things like, uh-huh. So you
You
would
should never say that.
Right. So depending on how like meaty your particular curriculum is, you might have to go and develop what you're going to teach them about empathic listening, deliberative listening, and critical listening. Like if I'm a lawyer in a courtroom and my opposing counsel is delivering, you know, or interviewing, questioning someone, I'm going to be critically listening deliberatively to every word that they're saying so that I can object or so that I can think of how I'm going to, you know what I'm saying? It's a different type of listening that's going on. And I think that is what this one is about. Understanding, but going through here with a fine-tooth comb. I'm going to continue going. You tell me if you see something and you're like, I don't know what that word means, or I couldn't tell you myself. Some of these are pretty like straightforward. Here's oral interpretation. Let's see if this is your purvey. Like if it's your as a communication art. I don't think this what it might be. I don't think
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah.
is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So, analyze the role of the interpreter and the ethical responsibility to the author, the literary text. What a fun class. Oh my goodness. This is so great. And there actually have been like famous, and I can't think of one for the life of me right now, but like famous novels where the novelist is still alive and they're like, I don't want a movie made out of my work. Like I don't, and you have to respect like someone else's creation. But because it's like their baby a little bit, you know what I mean? That they
Yeah.
birth to it from their brain, and then to have somebody take it and not follow or validate or respect their wishes as far as creation, representation, even analysis. Like if you come out reading Eliza Wiesel's Night and you think that it's anti-Semitic, you didn't interpret it the way it was meant to be. And you can't create a play, that speaks to it otherwise. Ethically, it's wrong. Morally,
Wrong.
so going through these things, stuff that you would talk with your students, like I so want to go back and be in the classroom. It's so fun. Here's the debate stuff. And so they're gonna ask you the different like styles of debate. I would bet, right? For
Yeah.
class.
I'm actually really focusing on like in the study.com, like I went straight for the debate and like the processes and then like the legal rules and stuff.
Right. Syllogisms, deductive reasoning.
Yeah.
So
Because
everything
I
that is listed in this document is important for you to make sure that you can just like articulate the way that I was talking about. This is what they would sort of have to do with this, explain and apply the distinctive approaches to prima facie. Is that how you say it? I'm probably saying it
There are
wrong.
the certain words I don't even know how to pronounce, to be honest.
Right. And so we got to know though, because you might have to say it with your students. So this is what I always,
Yeah.
when I'm going through the TEKS, and that way I also practice how to say it. Oh, hold on. I just go away.
So what was the other word? I think ad hominem, I think was the word. I
Ad
was like
hominem, ad hominem, ad hominem. I think I'm saying it right.
something
Look
like
it up too.
that. Yeah, something like
Ad
that.
hominem. Yeah.
I know how it looks like. I just don't know how to pronounce it.
Okay, so we are gonna do this. Is this a 2-minute one? Oh yeah, we're gonna do this Lex Learn Law, and we're going to find out how to say it first and foremost, practice our oral language proficiency building, and then we're gonna know what it's about. But if you had your stuff printed out, you should take, a note there. Oh no, in Malaysia, like what? Let's not watch the one that's about Malaysian law. That's kind of funny. Let's do, is this one like, oh, that one's very short too.
Hi, today I'd like to talk to you about what is a prima facie case.
Fascia, prima facie.
In New York, lawyers, doctors love
Thank
to
you,
use
Mr.
these
Newman.
fancy Latin terms. Prima facie.
Prima facie.
At first look on its
And so with,
face,
seems
appears to be at.
So with your students, something that you would do like before you taught this particular TEK, so you might say students need to be able to describe or identify what is a prima facie case. And so in the beginning of class, it's best practice to go over what is our objective today? Like, where's the goal? What are we shooting for? What are we going to be learning about? And then define and practice the things. If it's something that's difficult to say ad hominem, say it many times and then say it at the end of class. Okay, guys, what is it that we learned about today? Prima facie. How do you say it again? Prima facie. So that they can also build that knowledge of correctly speaking new words.
First, it's prima facie, fascia on its face.
On its
So
face.
what's a prima facie case? Prima facie case requires prima facie evidence, but still, what do we mean by that? We mean evidence that is sufficient, evidence that is adequate, evidence that is enough proof to make out the case and meet your burden. And different cases, of course, have different burdens. An administrative case has a substantial evidence burden. A criminal case has a beyond a reasonable doubt burden. Prima facie means that you've made your case if you have prima facie evidence or proof to prove your case and all the elements or parts of the case. If you have questions about your DWI case or other criminal matters.
Okay, so prima facie, the evidence has to be a primavera means first, primary, prime number. So it first, and then fascia on its face, the Latin root of it. So you could even show them how, what it means in the name of it itself. And you would just have to explain that to them. And so now you know what it is. And you could easily instruct students and ask, like, what would be important to explain to the students regarding prima facie case, right? And so there would be particular things. First and foremost, we got to define what is a prima facie case. That's the most important step that we need to do, right? And then provide examples of that, development of evidence and what would be sufficient and what would be adequate for, whatever it was that he just said. Okay, so let's do one more. Okay, so I'm gonna just so we can hear it said. Wait, let me see. This is 2 minutes and it's PBS. I'm a fan of public broadcasting system.
I think we're onto something big here.
just the straw man fallacy.
Together as one.
All of those you got to
Yeah.
read for, because
You've been
there's going
sent
to
a
be
link to this
those.
video because someone is concerned that you might not be arguing your case to your utmost ability. They're concerned you might have used a fallacy to make an important point, thus defeating your own claim. The fallacy they're concerned you might have used is the ad hominem attack. Ad hominem criticism is where instead of criticizing the argument or ideas of the person with whom you are conversing, you criticize the person themselves. And in so doing, claim you have also criticized their argument. And boy, is this one popular. Ad hominem criticisms are not always, but are very frequently fallacious.
Yeah.
Character or actions of the person making an argument are directly related to the matter at hand. Criticizing them and not their ideas is a fallacy.
Right. And so, like, let's say I showed this in my classroom and I had ELL students. I might, before like having watched it, see that they if they watch this, they might need definitions, certain ideas defined, even about this particular ad hominem, that it's a fallacy, and it's going to be defined in it of itself. In the definition, there might be things that need, more explanation, especially for our students that are learning English as a second language.
Second language. Mhm.
Yeah. So all of the different fallacies, common fallacies are
Hey there,
here.
internet commenter. You've been sent a link
I
to this
would-
video because someone is concerned that you are not
Moving the
arguing
goal.
utmost
Let me
ability.
do
They're concerned
Texas
you might have used
sharpshooter.
a
Never heard about that
fallacy to
one.
make an important point, thereby undercutting
Yeah,
your
because
claim.
the ones I've done in
See,
the
they're concerned you
study, they only talk about 8, I believe. They talk about 4 distractions, which is the red herring,
Right.
the ad hominem
hominem.
ones. They talk about also uh
Ad hominem. Ad hominem.
it's not policy, but it's one where like they explain, oh, because we've done this, we've always done this way. I forgot the name of that one.
Right. Like, since it's always been done this way, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, that doesn't mean it's the best way
Tradition?
to be done. Excuse me? Tradition. I'm not
It's
sure.
tradition. I think it's tradition. Yeah.
Why are none of these like I don't understand this one. I don't know this one.
And then there's bandwagon, which are like
Oh,
different ones. Like
absolutely.
just
Yeah.
different. Yeah. But it only mentions those 8.
Probably because it mentions them somewhere in the here, like specifically. I wouldn't doubt.
Mhm. Did it say fallacies here? I thought I saw fallacies somewhere. Oh, identify fallacies, but it doesn't tell you which ones specifically. So, pretty vague here. Okay, yeah, I figured.
Trying to look argumentation, nonverbal, critical listening, and argumentation for debate. Let's look at independent study. I think this is just a research class, like use rehearsal strategies to gain command of the text and enhance communication of staging and
No, that's still part of it.
yeah, that's still part of yours. I think we stop at journalism, right? Because you don't have to do journalism. But let me see if there's any. Yeah, that's it. So it's only up until here that you have to go through and do the deep dive through this independent study in speech. So that's 41. So page from 41 to page 33 to 41.
There you go.
those particular areas need, attention, and make sure that you feel competent in those areas. Did you have access? And I'm going to stop my share for a second, and then start my video again. And also, I'm going to see if I sent you, did you have access to that Google Drive with those things in there, the standards, the TEKS, the one that I was showing you a little bit ago? Let me show you again. So, this one with this.
I believe so.
Okay.
I think those were sent in an email, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
the videos, with the video links of going through the standards. Like I think I have a speech. I do. Okay, so there's one, it's only like 37 minutes long, and then this one has to do with like just being able to utilize particular strategies for the students that they give you in the classroom. Like if they tell you, oh, these students are English language learners, or you have some special ed students, or whatever they give you in the mix up, you're able to like provide them the best, most appropriate instruction and assessment.
Mhm.
So we will end here. Oops. And did you know when you wanted to take your exam again? Let me stop.
Well, from what I remember.